So I think we can start, and if other people are going to join me, they can come with us, they can join us and be part of the conversation. So welcome everybody. I'm Ovidiu Condurache. I come from Ashoka Romania, an organization, a global organization that works in supporting social innovation, social entrepreneurs around the world. And I accepted the invitation that Claudia and Anka put forward to facilitate a couple of sessions with you. We already had a conversation regarding building a network of allies, and today we're going to approach this theme of how we build innovation within our ecosystem and within our organization, our project. And before giving the floor to Claudia to tell us exactly what's the bigger plan of why we are here, I would like all of us to go through a quick check-in, and I would like all of you to write in the comments. I hope you can do that. To write in the comments what's an emotion that you are experiencing, that you are living fully in this period. It can be more than one emotion, but let's see what are the emotions that we are living this period. And please write them in the comments so that we are all aware of the emotions that we are all experiencing this period. Fear, frustration, anxiety, joy. We have a silence. Yeah. I think now more than ever, we're experiencing a diversity of emotions all coming at the same time. Thank you so much for sharing. And while we still can't type these feelings in the comment, I will pass it on to Claudia to tell us a little bit about what's the bigger picture, what we are trying to do in this period with innovation and librarians.
Thank you very much, Ovidiu. Good morning, everyone. I'm going to tell you a little bit about where these plans that we are putting now in actions came about. And these ideas came before the pandemic. Came from us working, me and Anka Râpeanu, working on projects with librarians in the regions and noticing over and over again two very important aspects. One, that at the local level, librarians are striving to make an impact through innovative ideas and innovative projects, and they're doing this out of their professional understanding of their job. And the second aspect was that on projects that have to do with contributing to community development through education, through even entrepreneurship, the NGOs that are trying to do this at local level in rural communities, for example, or in poor communities, are kind of ignoring libraries as possible partners. And we've seen this happening over and over again, not only in Romania, but also in Moldova and in other parts of the region. So our thought was, okay, so we are doing this, and we are doing this, in different ways in the region. Why not get together and learn from each other and learn about each other's ways to actually be able to push these innovative ways of developing communities and make them successful in our communities. So this was our thought last year sometime. At one point we were talking, and it's like, so what are we going to do? And there was a big push that Progress Foundation did to organize a conference in the region. And this was supposed to be a physical conference, and it turned into an online conference. It was supposed to be a regional conference, and it became an international conference. And I'm talking about Occupy Library. And even though this, changed because of the pandemic and all the pressures that came with that, our observations remain valid. So we found out during the conference that even in the face of the pandemic, the librarians and the libraries in the region are striving to help their communities. They are fighting this hard and full of mixed emotion reality for the benefit of the community. And at the same time, the NGOs do need partners at the community level that will make an impact and provide sustainability. So we said, okay, let's do this even more, even better. And even though we have the limitation of not being able to meet, let's try to build a community and let's bring together all these innovative actors and learn from each other. So the same objective that we had last year is valid today. But the reality of the times that we live in is that we cannot meet, we cannot, as we were joking the other day, we cannot drink a glass of wine together easily. So we kind of decided to make this an effort with repeated opportunities for you to meet with each other, to learn about each other, to learn about what's going on in our countries in the region. So we have a series of events that we have planned until early next year. And as Ovidiu mentioned, he already hosted a first meeting. We already had a presentation about NGOs and library projects in Romania. We are planning for a meeting in December to talk about Ukrainian situation with NGOs and projects. Next week, we have a matchmaking cafe, where hopefully we'll get you again online for an hour or so to just share with each other and learn from each other and see maybe you can get a partner for a future project. So all these meetings are in the making. We are planning for them. They will be announced on Occupy Library, and we will continue to create the space for the meeting. But really what is important, besides the space, is for you to put the time in to think about all these opportunities that we have as a network and as a community. Because we all know, the theory that's easier to do it in a group than as one player. But for so long we've been doing this as one player, and we are so good at doing it on our own that sometimes we think, why bother? Why take time to talk with somebody from, I don't know, Republic of Moldova, who might not have the same topics or the same interests. But from our experience and from all the library conferences that we've been to and all the network events, this is how actually you develop yourself. You put your ideas forward. But it's just take one brave moment for you to say, this is what I'm doing, and would you like to work with me? And the chances are people will say yes. The chances are new ideas will come up. And the chances are all the great ideas and projects that you do locally will be able to spread in the region and happen quite naturally, actually, in the libraries and NGOs in the region. So if you feel like this is something that you want to contribute to more, if you want to be part of it in a more meaningful way, we are here to listen to you, to help. And hopefully, to see you at the future meetings that we're gonna have, just to grow together and know each other better. So that's the plan that we have. Follow us on Occupy Library. We are trying to put the announce out as soon as possible. It's just, this time of the year with all the emotions that you mentioned, we also feel in our small organization. So we are trying to do it better. Please let us know how we can do it better for you so that it can be easier for you to participate in our plans and in growing this community together. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Claudia. And it's really great to have such an intention of building a regional community of people who innovate together. And I really encourage any of you who want to be part of this core group of organizing events and organizing the community to shout out and express your intention. I think it's really important now that it's easier kind of to connect with the others via online, although it's not the same feeling. And now coming back to the sessions that we have today, my plan for today is to present very briefly what we do as Ashoka so that you understand where I come from, and then to present the model, the 5R model, which was developed by USAID that we can use in analyzing where we can innovate in the initiatives that we have. And then we're going to have around half an hour where each of you are going to apply that model on your activity, your organization, whatever level you choose to apply it on. And then at the end, we're going to have a run through the model with an example, one of you who would like to present. And then we're going to end the sessions with our conclusions. But basically what I would like for each of us to take out of the sessions today is to realize different ways in which we can practically innovate, so that we do not think of innovation as something big, unachievable, or I don't know, hard to think of. So that's my plan for today. I will briefly share my presentation just in a minute. I hope it will work in a minute. Yep. So basically, as I said at the beginning, I work at Ashoka. Ashoka is not such a usual name of an organization. What we are and what we do, we're an organization, a global organization that was founded in the 80s. And it's the organization that we can thank for the invention of the term social entrepreneur. And for us, a social entrepreneur is the kind of person who identifies in their community, in their region, social problem, a problem that it's really big, and that person uses his resources, his skills, his knowledge to build an approach that can solve that problem and produce impact on a large scale. And we support this kind of people in 90 plus countries, and we have a community of now 3,800 Ashoka Fellows, these people that we select as social entrepreneurs and we support them. And that's what we do. And we're present in Romania since 2017, where we already selected 5 Ashoka Fellows. And one of them is actually present in this session, Dorica Dan. So we also have an example here with us today, which is really nice. We're going to talk, I've actually had her in the presentation for today without knowing that she's going to be part of the presentation. So that's going to be interesting. Dorica, please, I hope you bear with me when I present a little bit about yourself. I hope I won't mess it up. So that's who we are. We support and select this kind of people, and we strive to build this world where everybody feels and acts and has the tools to act as a change maker. And this is something that we try to achieve all around the world, to make sure that people actually, when they see the potential of producing a change, they have the tools and they feel comfortable to lead the change. And how we do that, on one hand, we support this, we select these social entrepreneurs who are at the, let's say, at the top of what they are doing. And okay. They are kind of the ones who are driving the change in their fields, in their respective fields. And we do that because they can inspire others to follow in their footsteps, to produce change in their world. The other thing that we do is that we are trying to work with other organizations to build our network of allies in reaching this everyone and change makers. And we partner with schools, with universities, with corporations, with civil society organizations, with communities such as this one of librarians and NGOs who work with librarians. It might sound like English word empower people to feel like they are change makers, but what we realize is that if we speak more and more about being a change maker, people will start to understand that what they are doing, it's actually contributing to some change in the society. And this is important to come from all, let's say, actors in society, not only from an organization such as Ashoka. So that's why we're trying to partner with all the organizations to make sure that people understand that they can be change makers, that they have tools to become change makers. And I also think that all of you who are part here in these sessions today, you are change makers because you are thinking in different ways of how libraries can actually contribute to society, how they can be they can have an active role here. And also for those who are not directly a librarian or work in a library, but you work with librarians or you'll be interested in working with them, it's still in this segment of change is you want to produce change. You're trying to reach out to people with whom you can produce change, which is really important. And the third aspect or let's say direction where we're present, it's where we're trying to see how we can support the young generation, the teenagers, the kids, to grow as change makers, how we can work with parents, how we can work with schools, with teachers, for them to instill these change-making skills to them. And this is another thing that we're doing. So that's the three directions that we're present in, and I will not linger any longer on the presentation about Ashoka. This is what change means to us, and it's an important framework for us to produce change in this world. You can do it at different levels. You can do it by delivering services done by your organization, which is the first level, and you can have an impact at that level. But then to produce larger scale change, to become an effective change maker, you need to scale your activity. And that can happen if, for example, other organizations take up your idea, or you work with other organizations to improve the model and to be a widespread methodology. And then we go from direct service to scale direct service, and then we go to systems change, when we actually change the way that the system that we work in exists. If it's either a legal framework, if it's the type of activities that happen, the type of relationship that we have. And in the end, what this leads to, it's a framework change, it's a change in mentality and in society, which is the highest level of change that we're striving to achieve. So that's something that I want for you to know, that beyond the direct service that each of the organization can produce, there's always levels of change that we can achieve. So now, coming back to this 5R model that I proposed for this session, and I think it's important to talk about it. The model looks like a turtle, so it's easy to remember it and how is it used. Basically, the 5R model, it's used and was developed to explain how an ecosystem looks like, a system looks like. It doesn't matter if it's a system for an organization, for a community, for an individual. It can be applied at any level. But the basic and why it's easy to use, it's because with this structure, you can explain how your system looks like. And each system has, as it is put here, 5 important elements, and that's why they are 5 R's, because each element starts with R. They were really nicely put and well selected. But basically, the model what says is that in a system, you start with bringing in resources, and resources, it can mean from financial resources, it can mean human resources, it can mean some type of connections, affiliations that can be thought of resources. It can be natural resources. It can be from I don't know, animals. It depends on whatever you do. Resources, it's everything that you bring in your system to produce the work that you're doing. And that's the first part of the model. Then the next within the system, we have 3 important elements to understand the system. One of them is roles. And what happens usually in our system is that we usually think of the people or organizations that are part of this system. But beyond that, it's important to think of the role that they play in the system, not only that they exist there. For example, I don't know, for in a system of libraries, for sure you have different types of libraries. You have different type of public institutions, you have different types of NGOs, different types of people who are interested in. But to understand how your system works, it's important to understand what's the role that they play. Because you can have libraries or librarians and who have the role of innovators. There you can have libraries and librarians who can be, let's say, who represent the challenges because they try to be conservatives or whatever. So you can actually split all the people and the organizations that you have in a system depending on the role that they play. Some of them can be the funders for innovations or for activities happening in libraries, and that's a role but it's very specific. And why it's so important to distinguish between roles and people or organization is because, as I said, one individual or one organization can play multiple roles in a system, and it's important for us to understand what's the role. How do we define that role? And even for ourselves and our organization, it's important to understand what's our role in this system. I am a librarian, I am I don't know, an institution, but what's my role? How do I contribute there? I am a service provider of some services, then that's my role. I educate people, so I can play the role of educator, that can be my role. I can have multiple roles, but it's important to understand what's actually my role in the ecosystem. Then what we have in the system is relationships, and relationships develop between roles. So for example, if in a system you have a funder and then you have someone who is, let's say, the educator has this role, or multiple people or organizations who have that role, they can establish a type of relationship, and it's important to name that relationship. That relationship is a collaboration. For example, they build together a project, or it's a transactional one. The funder gives money to the organization develops a project. What's the type of relationship that you have between roles? And that's why the first step, it's important to put the roles there, not only the names of people and organizations, to understand what's their role, because then in between you have the relationships. If you have, for example, just to give my previous examples, you can have librarians filling in different roles. Some of them can be the innovators, those who are driving. Some of them can be the conservatives. And you can have these two different roles in the system. And basically they are filled in, let's say, by librarians, just given a random example. But between them, you have a type of relationship. So it's important to acknowledge the type of relationship. If you would analyze the system just by thinking that you have librarians in the system, it would be hard to understand the relationship. But if you put the roles and knowing that the roles which they stand for, then it's easier to understand, okay, this is the relationship. And that's why we have this relationship, because they have these roles. And then what we also have in the system, it's the rules. What are those elements that govern the system? And what do we mean by rules? We have either things who are from the legal perspective. You have laws, you have codes of conduct, you have all these written rules that apply for the system, and they can be different from the city level to the country level to the region level, but that's a level of rules that we have, and they govern, they say how the system functions. But apart from that, there are some unwritten rules which are very important, and we don't think so much about them. And that's important as well. For example, some of the behaviors that you might see in your systems, they can be rules. For example, I don't know, a random example, the municipality never collaborates with a public, I don't know, library, let's say. I don't know, that's totally out of this world example, but how this would translate in the system, you would see a line, a relationship where it says they do not collaborate. So actually it's a missing link, but then as a rule, this is a rule. This becomes a rule, like it's an unwritten rule that in my city, the municipality never gives money for this kind of project, let's say. And that's kind of an unwritten rule. And it's really important beyond those written rules, which is easier to have access and to know about them. It's important to understand which are the unwritten rules. For example, you might have, I don't know, let's say in a country, a librarian from one region with a librarian from another region, and you know that those people will never work together, or those regions, they never work together. And that's kind of an unwritten rule, even though it translates in relationship, but that's also an unwritten rule. Or I don't know how long it takes to get an approval from someone. That's not always a written rule, but that's an unwritten rule, which is important to be aware of. And why this is helpful in understanding the system is because then you realize if there's anything that you can do regarding those rules. And most of the time where you have a bigger power of interfering is for these unwritten rules. For the written rules, it may take longer to change something which is a law, but in terms of changing some behaviors, changing some unwritten rule, then yeah, that's something important. It can be some things that happen in the community. For example, you know that I don't know, in a community, people, they are so driven by a type of belief that they do not come to library, and that's kind of an unwritten rule, that there's a community of people that do not come to the library. So that becomes an unwritten rule, and you work with that. And these are, let's say, the center, the three roles of the center of the model. And then you have the end results, what the system produces. Because when you think about the system, it's either around an organization, around a project, around a bigger institution, or you can have the system around the problem. Then this system produces some results. And it's important for you to define the system that you're thinking of. It can be the system of an idea that you have. It can be the system of the organization that you have. It can be the system of the entire system of libraries and librarians in a country or in a region. So it can differ the level, but it's important to define what's the level that you want to apply this model for. And then the results are what this system produces now. And it can be from I don't know, increasing the education level. That can be something that it produces. It can increase the some behaviors in people. It can change some behaviors in people. It can produce some new processes, new activities that the librarians have, and they are important for children. So everything that this system and your organization contributes to are the result. But where we were going to focus today are on the first four elements, where we can produce innovation in terms of bringing resources to the system, where we can produce innovation within the system regarding roles, regarding relationships, and regarding rules. So these are the elements where we are going to directly work with. I have examples of Ashoka Fellows to explain how innovation can look like for each of those four pillars. But before jumping to them, let me know if there's any question that I can respond. I saw that there were also some comments in the chat. I can't see them, but if there's any important question that I can answer now, please let me know. And afterwards, I will move to the examples for each of the elements. Okay, if not, I will go through the examples and give some more time after the examples for your questions. But I would really like for you to understand the model and where there's any question to answer it. Okay, so the first example of innovation regarding the resources used is Bart, an Ashoka Fellow that sought to find a solution to find these leftover landmines from wars and from, you know, civil wars or whatever military actions took place in Africa mostly. And what he has found as innovation in terms of resources was to use rats, big rats, that, you know, you can think of them as like pests or something like that, but they are not a pest. They actually, in Africa, Bart uses and trains these rats to effectively detect these landmines, these explosives. And this is an innovation in terms of the resources that you bring into the ecosystem. You wouldn't think, when you think about explosives and landmines, you wouldn't think of using an animal to detect them. So that's an innovation in terms of the resource used and brought to the system. And what it meant in terms of results and achieved result is that more landmines are found. There are people in Africa who can have a job by working with these rats. People have a, you know, they have a safer life there. And this is an example of innovation in terms of resources, using rats, so some animals, to detect landmines that, you know, can inflict a lot of damage on the people. And this is an example of the innovation that you can have in terms of resources. You can always think of what are some resources that I've never thought of being used in connection with libraries, but they can actually work. Who knows? We can see now that during the pandemics, things that we never thought that might be possible, they are now possible with connections, with everything. So who knows what resources are there, and we actually didn't think of using them.
And the other way around the video, if I may, if you're an NGO and you look at resources in the community, maybe consider public library, you know, as a resource for future projects.
Yeah, even more. I think it's even goes beyond that. I mean, even civil society, even you as an individual, as an NGO, you can see librarians and libraries as resources, and you can build new. I would say there you can build like actually new relationships, and we can talk later. But yeah, for sure, that's a great input. Thank you, Claudia. And let's go forward to give an example of innovation in terms of a role. And Frank, I will present here Frank Hoffman. He's an Ashoka Fellow from Germany, and he developed Discovering Hands. He's a doctor. He works with women to prevent and to detect breast cancer. And his main concern, and what was his insight, he realized that many of the women, they fear going to the doctor. They fear going and having the treatment because it's usually very, the experience is not let's say humanly experience. It's very like, I don't know, clinical, let's say, experience. So as a woman, what Frank found out, they don't feel safe in going. And so the result of that is that more women tend to develop breast cancer, and when they find out about the breast cancer, it's in very late stages, which is really hard. So he had this in mind. How can I make this experience better for women? How can I detect early on the breast cancer? And what he did was to, and he had this insight while he was showering, and the power went down, and he realized that people that had are blind or have visual impairments, they have a very high tactile abilities. And then he realized that these people can have a new role in what it means to identify breast cancer and to treat it. And this is innovation in terms of bringing to the system and developing a new role, which didn't existed until then. And this role of medical tactile examiner, it's not a medical profession, let's say, but how Frank is using this new role is to give women the space where they have a longer conversation, usually with another women. So usually the women are those who do this medical textile examination, although there are also men involved in the program, but mostly women. So he uses this role to make this space where women feel safe to come and have this, I don't know, 1 hour examination and a conversation with this person who has time to have a conversation and explain all kinds of stuff. And these medical textile examiners can feel any irregularities that that any breast might have, of very, very small proportion, even if they are cancer or any type of thing that might be wrong. They can detect it better than a doctor. And for sure, after they have this examination, then the women are led to a doctor for, proper diagnosis. But what's important is that Frank Hoffman used, and it's using visually impaired people to have a new role and and he actually is introducing a new occupation in the medical field. He's creating jobs for these people, so they have a different role. So the question is now, okay, what's for us? What's the role that librarians can have in society? So that's also a question that we can think of in terms of innovation. What's the role that that librarians can have and the libraries can have? And there can be an innovation for sure, depending on the system that you're thinking. But what's the new role that they can have? And then we have Dorica. So Dorica, bear with me. I hope I'm going to present you quite well. We have Dorica here with us, which is it's really great. She's going to be here for half an hour with us. So why I'm presenting her as an example in terms of innovation regarding relationships. Dorica Dain is an Ashoka Fellow from Romania. She was elected in 2018, so one of our first ones. She works in the system of rare diseases, which is not something that we usually know because it's not a subject that we talk so much. And a bit of the context of for Romania, for those of you who are from Romania, sorry, you might already know the information. So when a patient goes to, I don't know, get a genetic test to see if that has a rare disease, they do not know where to look for, or if they already know they might have such a disease, where they go for therapies, where they go for social services, where they go for a specialized doctor whom they talk to. And usually there are different people scattered around the country, different centers for different services, and usually these people do not collaborate. And that was the base and one of the insights that Dorica had. How can we bring together people to collaborate for such critical illnesses like rare diseases, where there are so many rare diseases, few patients, and the knowledge is encapsulated in few people. So how can we bring together these few people that have the knowledge, that can work together to create a care process, an integrated care process for the patients with rare diseases? And why Dorica's work is innovation in terms of relationship? Because she built some relationships of trust and collaboration where they were not there beforehand. Like the academia people working with those from the medical field, with those from social services, with those delivering therapies, work together to think of this care process for patients with rare diseases, which means that in the existing system, new relationships were built, because the roles of those people they already had. The academia to, I don't know, develop research, the geneticians to have the most advanced tools to detect rare diseases. The social services the ones working directly with communities and identify people who might have rare diseases. So each of them had a role, but they were not connected. They didn't have such strong relationship. And this is something that Dorica developed on a very important field of rare diseases. And that's kind of an innovation. And also how it can relate, thinking more and more of the system of libraries, librarians, NGOs, and organizations working with librarians. What are the relationships that maybe are not functioning that well, and we can develop, or a relationship that we can develop with some unlikely allies that we talked in the previous webinar. What are some unlikely allies that we can bring on board and build some relationship? And it goes both ways for organization wanting to work with libraries and for libraries and librarians. So that's an example of building innovation in terms of relationships. And the last example of innovation in terms of unwritten rules. And, it can even be a bit of written rules here. And we have here Stéphane Gigandé. He's an Ashoka Fellow from France. He was elected in the last fiscal year. So it's one of our newest Ashoka Fellows elected. And he works in the field of, food production and all this big industry that we have here with a lot of products that we see around us and who are sold around the world. And if we think about the system, we kind of see how the power in terms of what kind of products are sold, the price of the products, the quality of the products, it's kind of determined by those who are actually selling them. And Stéphane wanted to change a bit the rules of the game. He wanted to give the power also to the consumers, for them to evaluate the products and have an opinion on them, and to collect those data that can influence what these big players in the food industry, produce and propose on the market. And basically what he's doing is that he has built a community of volunteers who use part of their time after they buy product to fill in information about the product in terms of things that are said on the label, things about the quality of the product, and it's kind of a scoring system for the products that they buy. And then all this information, which is hundreds and thousands of entries that you have, data points, they can be used either by big food chains, distribution, food chain distribution to adapt the kind of products that they have, to adapt the prices that they have, to adapt the kind of ingredients that they use in the food based on the indicators that come out from the volunteer, because all this information is public. All this information is used by apps around the world, and it's used, as it says here, in 10 countries. So basically he's changing the rule where the power over how and what type of food is consumed and put forward on the market, it's not only a decision made by the big food chain corporation organization, but it's also vetted, let's say, by people. So people also have a power. So this is kind of an unwritten rule that he has changed, where the consumer has a power to dictate what the company should sell or not on the market. And you can go on, so on his website is really interesting what he's doing. But this is an example of the rule that you can rewrite or a rule that you can introduce, giving power to, how is it in his case, give power to the consumers. And this can be also, if we think about the system where the libraries function, what are some rules that we can change here and we can think of. And these are some examples of Ashoka Fellows. For sure, there are more than that, but these are some examples that we have now. And I'm curious now, what are your questions? I think I talked a lot, and I would also be very mindful of the time and get space for you to speak up your curiosities, and then to get to the work part where we actually use the instrument. So I'll stop my share screen now, and I want to see your faces and to see what are your questions and curiosities regarding the model. If it's easier for you, you can always also write it in the comment. But then if you don't have, let's say, a clarification question, I have a question for you before jumping into the working exercise. How do you perceive this kind of model of analyzing the way that you can innovate? I'm sure if any of you has different experiences previous different experiences regarding innovation, I'm curious, how do you perceive this model of putting innovation in this structured way?
We have a comment, Ovidiu,
Me.
that the model is unaffordable, from Delia. If you want to say a little bit more.
Yeah, Delia, I would really like to understand what do you mean by that? Mm-hmm. I understand it can look a bit complex, but if you take it piece by piece and understand what are the resources that you're using, just starting from you as a person, as an organization, just to understand what are the resources that we use, and you can start just by that and understand, okay, so these are the resources that you use. Is there any way that we can innovate in terms of the resources that we can use? Yes, no, then move on. What are the relationships that we have? With whom we have relationship? Is there a new relationship that we can build? Is there a new way? Is there a way to improve a relationship that we have? That can also be a way. So just taking step by step, that's why I presented different types of innovation for each of those R's, because it's important to understand that when you analyze the system, it can be, you can have time to analyze it as complex as it can be, but you can also just take one of those elements that it's important for you, like, I don't know, the relationship that you build with the partners that you have, and you can think just, on that. Well, who can be a new lead for us? What type of relationship we can build? And I think the basis of using actually this whole model is to understand the first thing, what's the need, the problem that you're trying to address, to solve through what you do. What is the, let's say, put it, change that you're contributing to. And when you have that in mind very clearly, then you can use this model of understanding what type of relationship can help me achieve that change. And then it's easier to use the model. Okay. Elena, can you tell me a little bit of what you're doing? Maybe we can start off with your example before jumping into the exercise. I know you're shy, but we are not live on Facebook anymore, so it's just between us. So you can open up your mic and we can talk. I see you're writing. I'd really like you to talk, if it's possible, to understand what's exactly what are the things that you do, because otherwise I couldn't know how to apply. Because in general, if it were for me to think of a library in terms of analyzing the model for resources, I can think of a lot of resources that you use, from the people that you attract, from the organizations that you bring on board, from the money that you have. And I would think, and maybe I can share my screen with how the exercise looks like and what I want us to work with. So the idea of what I wanted us to work was actually to see what are the things that we have in terms of resources, roles, rules, relationships, and then to see where we can bring some sort of innovation. So in terms of resources from, that library uses, I would think of there from the infrastructure, anything that you can have there, from the tech infrastructure, to the materials that you have there, to the human infrastructure, to the funds that you have. Those are resources that you have, let's say. And in terms of innovation, there can be some new resources that you can bring up. Maybe you can access some money that you think they are hard to obtain, or to get to some people who would be nice to have as input givers for any of your activities. That can be a type of innovative thinking that you have. So it's more about, what are some new resources that I can bring on that can help my work. So it's not to bring new resources for the sake of bringing new resources. It's just, what are some untapped resources that I can use to achieve my goals? And that's the kind of question that I'd like us to explore regarding resources. Regarding roles, here you can think in two ways. On one side, what is the role that you as individual, or you as a library, or you as an NGO have in the system? So to define, my role is as educator, as shaping minds, as community organizer, as whatever the role that you have. And you can think of the role that you have and think of how can your role be an innovative one, like the Frank Hoffman role, where you had visually impaired people, and their role kind of in society were to be like beneficiaries, but then he changed the role that they played in society, and they became those medical textile examiners. So it can be a question that you can ask: what's the role that you can play within your community, within society? And on the other hand, you can think of what are the roles that you want to create in your system, if they don't exist, or what are the roles that you want to improve, which is not about yourself but can be about others. So there are two things in which you can think about the roles here. Okay, I see Ina's comment. Yeah, this is a good example, like a role that libraries can have. So instead of being a place of where you lend books, it can be an economic driver for community, and that's a different role that you can have. So that's the kind of exercise that I think of. What's the role that I have now? What's the role that I potentially can have in the system? Or what's the role that I see important in the system that I can contribute to shaping it? And then in terms of rules, here, this is something that I for sure don't know regarding, what are the unwritten rules among librarians, among libraries and NGOs. For that, I'm not aware. I'm not that aware. But here, in terms of rules, you can think of what's a custom that you would like to change in your community, in society, or what's a custom that you're working to change. Or it can also be, what's the type of law that I want to change. There may be a regional I don't know, policy paper proposal that I can put forward, and that can be some type of rule where I can innovate. It's a new rule that I bring to the system. So you can think of either a legislation that it's needed that you put it forward, or it's something in terms of a local custom, tradition, and written rule that you can contribute to change. For example, I don't know, where people see libraries only as the place to go and lend a book. So maybe I want to change that rule, that unwritten rule where people only do that. And I want people to see, to change that and to see libraries as a place where they develop skills, for example. And then you rewrite the rule. And in terms of relationships, here you can think of your partners, your allies, and think of the relationships that you already have. And in terms of innovation, to think of how that relationship should look like in order for me to achieve my goals, to achieve the impact that I want, to achieve the change that I want. And that's the type, that's the first point of innovation, to see how you can, you can help evolve a relationship between you as a librarian, you as an NGO, you as a library, and your allies. So by building a new relationship, by improving a new relationship, so that's the kind of innovation that you can think of. Let me know if there are questions. If not, we can go directly to the exercise, and I would invite, I'll put here the document, and what I invite you is to access this document. You should all have access, download it, and try to think of what are the resources, roles, rules, or relationships through which you think you already innovate, you already bring a new resource, you already defined a new role for yourself or for the others, you already wrote a piece of legislation on a new custom in your community, or you have developed a new relationship, and also think of what can be something that you can develop from now on. And I encourage you to use your mother tongue when you fill this in, so please do not use English if it's not comfortable for you. Please use your native tongue, whatever is that, so that the exercise is useful for you. And I think we can have, let's say 20 minutes for that. So please, each of you, try to answer those questions where you know the answer. If there's, for example, it's too hard to think of a rule, okay, then don't answer. If it's hard to think of a resource, don't think about that. Think of that specific art where, you know, okay, I know, here's where I innovate, here's where I could bring something new and innovative to the scheme. So we have 20 minutes for that, and we're going to split up in smaller groups. So we're going to be in groups of 3 people so that we don't feel the pressure of being all together in the same room. We're going to be split into smaller groups, and I will reach out to each group to see if there are questions, if there's any way I can support with this model. And also use your, let's say, roommates, since you're going to be in a room with at least 2 other people, if you have any question or if you want to share something about the things, about the model. But just use this model to think of either you as as an individual, either a project that you have, or as the whole organization that you're working with. So 20 minutes for now in groups of 3. Let's see how it goes to apply this model for us. And I will go from room to answer any question that you might have.
So should I start the rooms?
Yeah, please.
Okay. Please join the rooms that you are assigned to, and feel free to think about the document that Ovidiu put forward.
You're back. I hope it was a good experience to go through the model, and I would just like to, I saw that some of you used directly the document that I sent to input some information, and just wanted to just taking this opportunity to share with you how this looks like, because I think it was a really good job that all of you did in terms of putting information here, and they are something that I never thought of, and I'm really thankful that you went through the exercise. So in terms of resources where there can be some innovation, I was really interested when I saw here that the embassies were put as where you can innovate in terms of resources that you can bring into the system, which it's really interesting. That's kind of new. I don't know how many libraries actually work with embassies, apart from those who, I don't know, there's a Czech library and works with the Czech embassy in a country, apart from that kind of connection. But I think that's really interesting. And also have individual donations, that's really interesting in terms of innovation for resources. The things that you can bring into ecosystem. And also thinking about the last webinar where we talked about the network of allies, this kind of having donors and embassies, they are kind of, let's say, unlikely allies that you can bring on, individual donors and embassies. Then just to pick up some ideas from the roles that you can have, and where there can be space for innovation, libraries to be seen as drivers for economic development, as it was already said, and also social and civic educator or advocate. That's also something important to see, to kind of have libraries, and not only libraries, but since this is a conversation about libraries, to have them as seen as civic educators for their communities. And I think that's also a type of innovation, where the libraries, there are spaces where people go to find tools to become civically engaged, to understand what it means to be civically engaged. So that's a new role that can be. And also this part of being the libraries, being the laboratory of ideas and project. That's also something interesting. You can think of the library as the space in the community where you develop new ideas and new projects that can bring up a lot of new streams of money, new stakeholders, just by putting the libraries in this role. And that's really good. In terms of rules, that's really interesting what it's written here. Library, what's the kind of rule that you can change? Seeing library as a silent place, where actually the library can be a very dynamic place and very vibrant space. So that's for sure an innovation. Working to change this kind of rules, that's really nice. And also this part of a rule where you can see library as cool place to hang out, just to put it in funky fresh terms. Yeah, that's also the kind of rule that brings innovation. Like how do you perceive this space? And in terms of relationships here, I only see here some names of institutions. I'm not quite sure what's the type of relationship that can be grown, but what I understand here, that it's more of building some relationships, having these people, these organizations, NGOs and government, local governments, having a relationship with them. And this for sure can be an innovation in places where that never happens. So that can be a local innovation, bringing on board and having a relationship with an NGO, having a collaborative connection with the local government. That can actually become an innovation, even if it's not an international one, but that can be an innovation at local level. And some other NGOs and local governments can take up this idea, or other libraries to take up that idea. So yeah, that's a really great way of putting it. And I think I talked already too much, and I'm sorry for that. But I'm really happy that we went through this model for you to understand that some of the things that you already do, they come from this space of innovation. That's really important. And I wanted to share my screen one last time. And then we can close out the session. And this is maybe the message that I want to have for all of you is that, considering the times that we're going through and all the uncertainties that we're facing around us, I invite you all to give yourself the permission to be change makers. And I think that's also important. I'm always going to repeat, each of us can be a change maker. Each of us can think, as you already did, of ways to innovate the work that we do and the roles that we have, the relationships that we build. Please give yourself this permission of considering yourself as change makers, and to let people come to you, or send the invitation to the world to let people come to you and consider yourself as a change maker. And that's something that I want all of you to be aware, that all of you are a change maker, and it's important to feel yeah. And I will stop my sharing now, but that was a message that I wanted all to know, because you already do amazing stuff. And before closing out the session, I want to thank you for taking the time to be here and to listen to me talking in a language which is not the, your native tongue, about a model that it's, new and may seem complex. But I'm happy that you were open to try this model out, and I hope this can actually help you in the way that you see your work, because there are already things that you're already doing. You can build on those, and it's important to use this model in that way to find out the things that you do and how can you improve those, because they are really good. And before jumping on, I would like to give you the feedback form, which is really important, and we give time for it at the end of the session so that you don't have to take any extra time to fill this feedback form. So if you want to use this final minutes, 2 minutes to access the link that I put here and to give the feedback, that's important not only for me, but also for Claudia and for all, and actually for all those of you who want to contribute in building this community and seeing how can all these workshops can be linked together in, innovating this community that we're putting together. So I invite you all to access the feedback form and to answer the questions. Thank you so much for being present. Thank you, Claudia, for the invitation. Yeah, was really glad to be here with all of you, even though I didn't get to speak with all of you. Unfortunately, apart from Romanian and English, I don't know any language, so that's harder for me to interact with all of you, but it was still nice to be here with all of you. And I will also leave my email address here in case you would like to know more about the model and how it can be used, or if you want to explore it more, I can help with that. So yeah, I have it here. Put it here. Yeah, so that's it from my side. Claudia, if there's any next step that I miss, please let us know. We have the matchmaking cafe next week, so we can use that as an opportunity to work on the model.
Yeah, next week on Thursday morning, we'll come back with the registration link and everything, but put it in your calendars if you want. We're going to get a matchmaking cafe to really get to know more about the people that have been in this room, are in this room, and will probably join us next week. So thank you very much, Ovidiu, for helping us look at our work from a different perspective. I think it's very valuable. You cannot create something new using the same tools. So bringing new perspective and new ways of looking at what we do, I think it's always useful. Thank you, everyone, for taking time to be with us today. And see you next time. Keep up the good work.
And please be mindful of your health and your well-being. That's also important.
Yeah.